Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description notes below the video where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to knit up for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, how to support me on Patreon, and where to get Watch Barbara Knit merchandise. Today, this video is going to be a continuation of a conversation that started in the comments of last week's video. It was the Fave 5 patterns for like small things to learn a new technique, and a viewer asked a question that on the surface is probably sounds like, yeah, that could be easily answered in the comments, but is way more complicated than, at least my take on it is way more complicated, I'm sure, than they could have anticipated. And I figured if they had this question and might find the answer interesting, then other people might too. And I just really want to make it clear that I do try to read every single comment, and I like that it's a dialogue. And so I'm bringing that dialogue into this video because the question is a lot deeper than the questioner, than the commenter, I'm sure, anticipated. So I'm going to go to here. So this is actually what the behind the scenes looks like in the YouTube interface when I can go in and look at comments. And there's a lot more other things, but this is just, I wanted y'all to see this conversation, what the impetus behind this video. So Kitten WAW asked, and I'm reading on another screen, interesting collection of techniques and nice achievable patterns to learn them. I'd like to see a Fave 5 on working with novelty type yarns, boucle, flag, railroad, eyelash, slub, faux fur, etc. And I said, I will definitely have to look for patterns others designers have done, because I avoid that kind of yarn. LOL. And this is one of the subjects, and again, it's something I mentioned. This is going to be something that's really tough to search for, because really when I'm looking for patterns for Fave 5, I'm doing the same thing everyone else does. I go to Ravelry and I use the advanced search and like narrow things down. And there's no button for novelty yarn. So it would be a matter of actually physically looking through hundreds, if not thousands of patterns. So it makes it a little challenging. And so, again, I said, I avoid that sort of yarn. And then Kitten WAW said, you have piqued my kittenish curiosity. Is it a matter of taste, distaste that keeps you from these yarns, or unfamiliarity? I've often heard crafters say they avoid certain fabrics, clays, paints because of their unfamiliarity with how that media will perform. You strike me as more on the fearless side. And I don't know if fearless is what I would say. I could possibly be defined as reckless. I just, you know what? Whatever. It's just knitting. What's the worst thing? It's not like it's going to explode in my face. So I'm kind of, I don't know if fearless is the word, but I definitely am reckless sometimes. And I replied, this might be a subject for a highly focused video, or we could talk about it in the live that will be at the end, actually next week, at the end of the month. But then I decided that I would do it as this video. So this video is going to be talking about novelty yarns. We're going to touch on what exactly novelty yarns are, but also why I personally do not particularly design with them. It's very rare that I'm going to design with a novelty yarn, and I have quite a few reasons. I don't have like a number of reasons, but we do. So the first thing I want to touch on is, what is a novelty yarn, in case you're like, I don't know what a novelty yarn is. So I did a quick Google search on novelty yarn, because as I said, I don't knit with these, so I don't have any in my stash to show you. So I figured, hey, Mr. Google could help me, my Google foo. And if you just type novelty yarn into Google and do the image search, you can see that it has the image search. You're going to get hits. Now, this is shopping. I am not endorsing buying yarn from Temu. Never done it, whatever. But this is, so we're going to skip past the shopping part. So a novelty yarn is a yarn that doesn't have your I hesitate to say normal, but your typical or your standardized yarn structure. And there are a lot of different yarn structures, a lot of different ply structures, and something like a chainette or the ones that are like tubes, and they don't fall into the category of novelty yarns because it's a matter of both how the yarn is constructed, but also its visual appearance and how it performs in knitting, weaving, crochet, whatever. It's a combination of things. And it's really a yarn that performs outside of the box of what is considered like a typical yarn. So you can see this, like this blue one right here has all these weird little nubbly things, and this is seriously thick, thin. Honestly, I don't know if this one that my mouse is hovering over, I don't know that I would call that a novelty yarn as much as I would call it an art yarn, which that's a whole different ball of wax, or ball of wool, if you will. But you can see there's all different kinds of, here's a good shot. So there we go. So this has these weird puffs, and this is like a ladder, and this has little booblies on it, and this is eyelash, and this is a boucle. So you have all of these different types of regular, they're irregular yarns in that they're like the texture. There's a most of the time there's a very significant texture. What's this? That is an eyelash yarn. So, and why it's called eyelash is because, as you can see, it looks like you have a center strand with eyelashes coming off of it. This is got these weird little mini pom-pom things going on. What else do we have? Let's minimize this. There's, I mean, the things that you can see in novelty yarn, and here's another YouTube video on what to make with novelty yarn. So maybe you can Google and find that. That's a really interesting looking, the type of novelty yarn is really infinite, and they're incredibly varied and incredibly different. And this is from Wikipedia. That's someone who's made something really cool out of novelty yarn. Here's a giant pile of novelty yarn. I hope that you're getting the idea in that novelty yarn is colorful and highly textured and all different kinds of things. And so boucle is one of the more common ones, and boucle is actually kind of making a move into being more traditional, but it still has that heavily textured, irregular, and you know what, maybe I should go back to this. So boucle. So here's boucle. So boucle, and there we go. I love the Google. So this is showing you the structure of boucle. Boucle has like a center core and then other yarn wrapped around it, and it's loose and it puffs up. And here's a couple basics about fancy yarn. You could also call novelty yarn fancy yarn. But boucle, this is a really common look for boucle. It's got the fuzz to it. Here's more novelty yarns. Boucle, and also I think Kitten WWW also mentioned slub yarn, and these are slubby yarns, and this says it's silk and boucle. Excuse me, my nose is itching. I'm talking about yarn. Whenever I talk about yarn, my nose is like, ew, fibers. A slub yarn has slubs like built into it. It's a thick, thin, and it's gonna be bumpy, and it has like little things in it, and like here's it woven. It's gonna bring texture to the party. So there's so many different kinds of novelty yarns that I can't really do a great overview of them, because every time you think you have a handle on them, somebody invents a different kind. There were those ones that got really popular a while that everybody did those twirly scarves with, that it's like netting and you basically just do a crochet thing and it spins on it. There's so many different kinds. So that is what novelty yarn is, okay? Novelty yarn is awesome. I mean, it's fun, it's exciting, it's wonderful for weaving. I know a lot of weavers really like putting it into stuff. It's fun to work into your work and add texture and different like fuzziness and sparkliness and all different kinds of really cool things. But as I said to Kitten WWW, I don't design with novelty yarn. I have behind me This is the one and only pattern I have designed with a novelty yarn, and this is a faux fur yarn. And it's just because I had fun with it. And the name of the pattern is Save the Bunnies. And the idea was that, you know, instead use faux fur instead of real fur, because I have pet rabbits. So I'm kind of against real fur, but that's just me. Not judging anybody. It's just my own personal. And this is it. This took 2 balls. It is a stockinette tube. That's all it is. And that ties into one of the big reasons I do not design with novelty yarns, is that novelty yarns are so incredibly interesting just in and of themselves. In stockinette, in garter, very, very simple patterns, that it's very difficult to design anything with any level of intricacy to it, because that detail is going to get lost. And I like detail like that. That's one of my personal things. But also, I have a really hard time. I have to feel like the person who bought my pattern is getting bang for their buck. And really, a lot of these novelty yarns, you could literally just knit a top-down garter triangle scarf, and it's going to look amazing, because what's doing all the work is the yarn itself. That yarn doesn't need any cables. It doesn't need any lace. It doesn't need anything in the pattern to make it look really cool, because the yarn itself looks cool. So I have a challenging time coming up with, really, it's challenging to design with. And it's challenging for me to design something that I feel comfortable charging other people money for. Is what it comes down to, because it's like, just buy the yarn, cast on as many stitches as you want, and knit a tube, you're good to go. So but I also know that some people aren't comfortable with that, which is, I don't, again, no shade at anyone who sells these kind of patterns, but it's just, it's not my style, and my personal way that I approach things. So that's one reason, is that these yarns look so good on their own that I have a hard time figuring out something that I feel is a worthwhile pattern for someone to purchase utilizing those yarns, because they're just, the simplest things are the best in these yarns. Okay, so that's the first reason. And then tailing into that, like reason 1B, is it's hard to design with these yarns, and it's very challenging, and I don't particularly like working with these yarns, which comes into my second reason. I am a very precise knitter. I like very regular stitches. I like having control of my knitting. I like knowing how it's going to come out. I do not do well with irregularity in my knitting. And that is what this is all about. That is what novelty yarns are all about. They're about irregularity. I only have a couple of designs that use thick, thin yarns, because I have a difficult time with thick, thin yarns, because I want control. I want to know exactly what my end product is going to look like, and I want my customers, my knitters, to be able to reproduce what I have knit. And when you're dealing with irregular yarns, you're not going to get the same thing every time. So I just it's my control issues. It's one of the reasons I like lace so much, because lace is very regular and very precise, and if you do it right, it looks exactly the way it's supposed to. And when you introduce irregularities, even deliberately, even when you want those irregularities, it just makes me a little bit twitchy. So my control, my need to have things nice and neat and tidy, are at direct odds with what novelty yarns do. And then that leads into my third reason I would say that I don't tend to design with novelty yarns, which is wanting my customer to be able to reproduce what I've done and be able to look at my pictures and look at what they're doing, is that novelty yarns are oftentimes flash in the pan. Novelty yarns are things that yarn companies develop and produce, and they're seasonal, and they might only last one season. And I try to avoid designing with yarns that I know are going to be discontinued within like a year. I want people to be able to reproduce what I have done, and you just can't, because you never know if a novelty yarn. So if you design something that truly takes advantage of that novelty yarn's unique elements, then that pattern's not going to look its best in anything other than that specific yarn, which brings me into the final. I think this is final. The final reason I don't design with novelty yarns, and it branches out, is I want people to be able to substitute to their needs, whether it's they're allergic to the fiber, or if it's a budgetary issue, or whatever. The reason is that they don't want to use the yarn that I personally selected for that. I want them to be able to achieve, again, something that looks at least similar to what I designed, if that's what they want. And so if I design something, I design to yarn. I design based on the yarn. I design something to take advantage of the yarn. And if I design something to take advantage of incredibly unique novelty yarn, then it's like this piece is only going to look like this if you use that yarn. And I don't like making people use that specific yarn. I want them to be able to substitute to fit their needs. So that's another reason why I don't design with novelty yarns, because you might not be able to get it. It's very difficult to substitute for. I mean, now, obviously, there are exceptions like this. I did this yarn came in, I was mildly obsessed with the yarn, I kept petting it, and it was super fast and super fun, and I just wanted to do it. So I made it and I put it out there. But again, I'm pretty sure that this yarn has already been discontinued. So you may or may not be able to find a reasonable substitute for this yarn. And because of that, nobody buys that pattern anymore. That pattern doesn't get purchased. So it's really creating a planned obsolescence for a product that should have very long legs and that people should be able to purchase and continue. But if that novelty yarn is unavailable, then there's no reason for people to buy that pattern. So it's difficult to design with. It looks great all by itself. It's very difficult to substitute for. And I can't handle the loss of control of having an irregular product. So there we go. I told Kitten WAW that it was way more complicated than she probably thought. It's not that I dislike these yarns. These yarns are super fun. And if I was just knitting something for myself, then like this was essentially for myself. It's fine. But as I design for you guys to knit, I need to have more assurance that y'all are going to be able to reproduce what I've designed. And also, I don't want to strong arm you into purchasing a very, very specific yarn if that is outside of your needs, budget, whatever. Love novelty yarns, though, and I'm not knocking novelty yarns at all. I hope that you take that away from this. But so that was a little, I guess, look into some of my design theory and how I work with things. And thank you, Kitten WAW, for starting this. And as I said, this started in the comments. So I would love for any of y'all, if you have questions like this, please leave them in the comments and it might spark another discussion. Also, I believe, you know what, I'm going to go actually look at the thing. Yes. So, I believe that next week is the last week of the month, so we will definitely be doing a live stream of of me. The Ask Me Anything live stream. And I think we're going to try it on Sunday because Sunday is now the new posting day. I've been doing it on Thursdays, and maybe we can hit some people that weren't able to attend the other ones. So, and also if you want to further discuss like what times we should do that, please come over to the Facebook group and we can maybe work out what would be a good time on Sunday, at least Eastern Standard Time, for us to have fun and talk. So if you like this video, please give it the thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.